So, this weekend, I went to see the Musical Box perform their Genesis Extravaganza tour, and oh man, it was amazing. I'm still kind of digesting it all, so a little bit of background. Like, the Musical Box was what got me into progressive rock with their Selling England by the Pound tribute tour. I have seen that particular show 5 times, I believe, and then I saw their rendition of The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway twice, and each I've just been blown away. Now, the last time I saw the Selling England by the Pound tour, I don't want to say I was a little disappointed, but I mean, I was kind of used to all the ebb and flows, all the costume changes. Now, this one was the Dark tour, which I believe Genesis had only done like 1 or 2 shows of or something like that. I know I'm going to get commented down below. Like, it was the same music. It was interesting to see how they structured the actual stage presentation a little bit. And so at the end of the particular program last year, they said that they're going to try something a little bit different in this Genesis Extravaganza. They were going to play a lot more music from The Lamb, but they were also going to push forward and include some tracks that were from Trick of the Tail and Wind and Wuthering. And that got me excited. I was just like, yep, sign me up 100%. So this weekend was the show, and as I said, it was just brilliant. I'm still kind of giddy about it. And the way that they structured it was very, very smart. They kind of divided it into 3 parts. The first part was the Trick of the Wuthering or something along those lines. They started off by playing In That Quiet Earth and the Restless Sleepers from Wind and Wuthering, the last 2 tracks, or not the last 2 tracks, but the final 2 instrumental tracks. And then they bled it into What Gorilla, and I believe the play out for Robbery, Assault, and Battery. So I love that little bit of a jam that they had within that. And at first I'm like, are they just going to do medleys? Because I'm all for that. I think that's great. But luckily that was the only kind of medley that they did within that. I feel like this track, Blood on the Rooftops, performs a lot better when performed live. So really, really enjoyed that. They ended off that whole set with the ending from Entangle, which... Then from there, they did Dance on a Volcano and Los Endos, and I believe that was it from those 2 albums. And that's kind of how they opened up the show. Then from there, they went into The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, and they performed pretty much the first album. I think the only tracks that they didn't touch from the first album was Cocoon, Grand Parade, and... I believe the Chamber of 32 Doors. They did everything else from the first album, and then they only did Lily White Lilith and the play out of The Waiting Room. So a lot of material from The Lamb. Then they had the intermission, and then they did After the Ordeal for the third part, which was pretty much covering a smattering of music that you don't necessarily hear from Selling England, Foxtrot, and Nursery Crimes. So from Foxtrot, they did Timetable and Can Unity. From Nursery Crimes, they did 7 Stones and the encore of the Musical Box. And then from Selling England, they did Firth of Fifth and After the Ordeal, and then the Cinema Show with... the play out from the last track from Selling England. And they also did not Visions of Angels, the first track from Trespass, Looking for Someone. And I believe they also did a track from their Genesis to Revelation to start this whole thing off. I can't remember exactly the track that they did, but yeah, just everything that they did encompassed each section beautifully. Like within the first section where they were covering Trick of the Tail and Wind and Wuthering, they had those pod lights shining down. Within the big play out from Los Endos, they had this laser thing going on that was just brilliant because it was pitch dark and they had this laser thing going on, and I was just like, oh, so good. And yeah, the entire playing style was brilliant. They were at the peak of their game. I hadn't seen them play this tight in a very long time. And the thing that I loved, the thing that I specifically loved about this was they were playing tracks that you normally wouldn't hear in the repertoire of the Musical Box or Genesis, like 7 Stones, Can Unity, which apparently they never played live. They never played Can Unity and the Coastliners live, as well as Timetable. Loved those tracks, and I always loved them, and I was always like, they never play them live. So the fact that they were playing these really great gems live was such a great treat. especially for a guy that's seen the musical box now like 8 times. It was so good to hear these tracks that you normally don't hear. And so kind of to that, and the one thing that I will say I was a little bit disappointed about, not necessarily disappointed, but if I were to give like a critique or something that they could improve upon within this show, or if there was a gun to my head and saying, what would you change? I would probably lay back a little bit from the Lamb. Like, I wouldn't play as much The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway material. Even though I know that they don't play it a whole lot, I wouldn't have played In the Cage, because In the Cage gets played quite a bit, which would have opened up the door for a little bit more of those gems, or at least played tracks from The Lamb that you don't necessarily hear all that often. We've already heard Carpet Crawlers a lot, so I would have left Carpet Crawlers off. I would have left In the Cage off because we hear it a lot. I probably would have also, maybe if hard pressed, leave off the title track. I would have left it on probably. But some of those longer stretches I would have just like, let's not. Just to open up the door for a little bit more of those hidden gems, so that we could play a little bit more from Trespass, because we don't hear a whole lot of Trespass going on within that. So, but I mean, at the end, when they were playing that play out from the waiting room, I had to take a little bit of a video because it was just so good. Another song that they didn't play that I'm kind of glad that they didn't was Supper's Ready. Again, we've heard Supper's Ready performed by the Musical Box so many times that I'm glad that they didn't play it to allow for more of those smaller moments and lesser heard songs be played. Because I'm almost completely sure that if they had played Supper's Ready, they probably wouldn't have played Seven Stones, and they probably wouldn't have played Canulity, and those were two of my favorite tracks from the show. So there you go. So yeah, overall, this was a fantastic, fantastic show. One that I'm still giddy of. Like, it's probably within the top 5 concerts that I've ever been to, which means that 2 of the top 5 concerts of my life are being helmed by the Musical Box. So yeah, just, yeah, so that's about it. Have you guys seen the show? If you have, let me know of your own comments about the show down below. What songs would you have loved to hear the Musical Box cover, or what songs would you have loved to see played live be there? So, thank you guys so much for watching. As always, you guys are definitely the best. And until next time, notes out.